All right, welcome to today's Smith in the World panel. I'm Jason Bauer-Clapp, Director of Career Education at Smith Lazarus Center for Career Development. And I'd like to welcome everyone who's with us today, including students, faculty, staff, family, friends, supervisors, and prospective Smithies, everybody in the room and on Zoom. Today's session is one of 7 Smith in the World panels we've held this year. Previous weeks have featured students in the Collaborative Leadership Design and Innovation Program, Health Professions, Business Finance and Consulting, Arts, Media and Communications, and Education, Nonprofit, Social Impact. And we'll be wrapping up this year's Smith in the World series with a Government, Law, and Public Policy panel tomorrow afternoon. The Smith in the World Conference is an annual event first held over 15 years ago. It was launched as a way for students to showcase their off-campus experiential learning through internships and research work. Today, you'll hear from 5 students who engaged in various STEM-related internships or research experiences this past summer in 3 different parts of the world. Sarah Bragdon, who engaged in paleoclimate research in the remote Arctic of Svalbard, Norway. Melissa Charles, who was a technical program management intern with Microsoft. And Dakota Mallen, Natali, Solis Gomez, and Ruby Hernandez, who are presenting as a group on their work with Humanos 3D, a nonprofit organization based in Colombia that develops prosthetics to help landmine victims and others. For the audience, what I hope you'll listen for today is not just what each of our presenters did in their summer work, but also their reflections on how these experiences have enriched their academics and influenced their plans for the future. Today's session is being recorded, so for those listening in on Zoom, please keep your microphones muted. In a moment, I'll turn it over to our first panelists. We'll have all of the panelists present, and then we'll open it up to audience questions after all the presentations have been given. For everyone on Zoom, please use chat to enter your questions for the panelists, as we'll be monitoring that space and we'll share your questions with the presenters. With that, I'll hand it over to Sarah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Bragdon, and today I'm going to be talking about the research that I was involved with this past summer in Svalbard, Norway. So a little quick introduction on who I am and what I'm doing here. I am a junior environmental geosciences major from Dover, Massachusetts. And for the past around 2 years now, I've been involved with research in the geosciences department with Greg DeVette. And through my research at Smith, I have become more and more passionate about studying climate, and currently I'm doing so through analyzing lake sediments. You probably have 2 big questions about my research this summer. Where did I go and what was I doing? To answer that first question of yours, I traveled to Svalbard, Norway, as highlighted in red on that top map. It's an archipelago located in the Arctic Ocean, pretty far away from here, as you can tell. But when I first traveled there, I had to go to the University Center, also known as UNIS, to complete 3 mandatory trainings. These trainings included a survival training, polar bear safety training, and a rifle and flare gun training. Then, after I completed all those trainings and helped to pack any necessary gear with 3 very experienced and knowledgeable geo faculty from the 5 colleges, I traveled to Cap Lanai, which is a little bit further from UNIS. A little bit more background on the safety trainings that I had to complete before being in the field. As I mentioned, the first training that I completed was a survival training. This training aimed to get me to feel more comfortable while being in the field and understanding what to do in the worst case scenario. Secondly, I had to complete a polar bear safety training, which gave me a lot of background and knowledge on what polar bears are like. I learned that polar bears are very unpredictable and territorial creatures, and I also learned a lot about the environmental protections in place in Svalbard towards polar bears. And lastly, I had to complete a rifle and a flare gun training to know what to do if I was out in the field and I saw a polar bear. Luckily, I didn't need to use that, but that's just a preventative measure. And a little bit more about what I was actually doing in Svalbard. I was participating in paleoclimate research in the Arctic. Paleoclimate research focuses on the use of climate archives to reconstruct past temperatures. Some examples of climate archives include marine sediments, lake sediments, ice cores, tree rings, and stalagmites. But specifically, my research at Smith focuses on the use of Arctic lake sediments to better understand environmental changes in the high Arctic. So a little bit of an outline on what a day would look like while I was out in the field. As you can tell from that top map, I was hiking a lot each day, approximately 8 to 12 miles each day, but it really varied. And I was traveling by foot and carrying all of my weight on my back. This didn't just include any food or drink that I needed throughout the day, but also extra socks, gas tanks, boat motors, whatever we would need throughout the day, that would be on our backs. And you can see me carrying one of the boat motors on my back up to Svalbard, which is that blue in the background. And in that top photo, you can see exactly how much we hiked each day and how we had to go across the big lake, Linnévatnet, to actually get to Congress. And a little bit more background on what was I in Svalbard to do. The main two things we were doing in Svalbard were collecting lake sediment cores and lake sediment traps. So you can see what a lake sediment core looks like to the right. They're basically these big tubes full of mud from the bottom of a lake. But you're probably wondering, how do I get to the bottom of a lake and how do I preserve that sediment? If you can imagine Greg and I leaning over this plastic boat using coring equipment shown in that middle photo, as well as two very long ropes to get to the bottom of the lake. Congress is actually 55 meters deep, so you can imagine it's pretty deep and you have to use a lot of rope to get to the bottom. But once we actually got the sediment cores, the main issue is trying to make sure that the sediment core stays vertical so that all the layers or lamina in the sediment cores, as you can see in the photo, don't get messed up. So this includes when you're in the boat, just holding the sediment core very tightly, but also when you're hiking back from the lake back to wherever you're staying for the day. And the other thing that I was in the Arctic to do was to collect lake sediment traps. So if you can imagine lake sediment cores as these tubes full of mud from the bottom of a lake sediment traps basically are these small little tubes that trap sediment at varying depths in the lake. You can see that the traps consist of these small tubes with large funnels that help to collect the sediment into the tube. And there are 5 different sediment traps at differing lengths or depths in the lake in Svalbard. And at the bottom, there's an anchor to ensure that the trap stays at the right depth. And also at the top, there's a buoy, so you actually know where to collect the traps. And I just want to explain a little bit of the future work that I'm doing on this project. Firstly, I just wanted to say being able to visit my field site was truly a life-changing experience. As you can see in these videos, analyzing samples in the lab is very fun, but it's a whole different realm when you are able to see and be on the lake that you've been studying for 2+ years. Furthermore, as many of you know, this summer had record high temperatures across the globe, and Svalbard was one of those places. But truly seeing climate change in action has just made me more passionate about wanting to study climate change and work towards a better future. And some future work that I'm involved with. This March, I will be presenting my data with Greg at the Arctic Workshop at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. And things are still up in the air, but I have the possibility of traveling back to Svalbard this summer with the main goal as me completing an honors geoscience thesis next year on this project. And before I close, I just wanted to say a special thank you to the people that made this experience possible. A special thank you to Greg DeVette, Al Warner, Steve Roof, Mike Rattel, and the Geo and Environmental Science and Policy departments at Smith. This wouldn't have been possible without their help.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Next up, Melissa.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Charles. I'm a senior here at Smith College studying quantitative economics. I'm graduating this semester, so whoop whoop. And today I'm going to be just telling you a little bit about my summer internship at Microsoft. So last summer I interned at Microsoft and my job title was a technical program management intern. So how I like to describe it is kind of in between like a business analyst, a data engineer, and a program manager. I managed a team of software engineers, and each of the engineers were kind of managing their own specific service. And I essentially worked on a project that I'll get into later. But again, just to give you a brief overview, my internship was 12 weeks long, and I was at the headquarters in Redmond. So what was it like to intern at Microsoft? So there was a lot of benefits, but just to go over a few, there was a pro club membership, which essentially allows the interns to work out at a very common gym nearby the office. There's also the Microsoft Connector, which is Microsoft's private shuttle service to help employees get to and from work. There is Perks Plus, which is a $400 stipend to allow employees to spend that on athleisure or an Apple Watch or whatever that helps them meet their wellness and like fitness health goals. We also were provided a $1,200 transportation allowance, which allowed interns to rent a car with Avis or to spend that on Ubers, etc. And we got a lump sum for housing, which was $10,000, as well as an intern allowance. And the image to the right here is just a screen grab of the kind of benefits outline when you receive an offer. So after highlighting all these benefits, I really wanted to share what the hiring process looked like for me. This differs from intern to intern, but for the most part, it typically looks something like this. So initially you apply online, and the application is on the Microsoft Careers portal. After your application, obviously their recruitment team gets a chance to take a look at your information, and if they decide to move forward with you, they will reach out to schedule a first screen call. So this initial screen call is like a phone call for about 30 minutes with a recruiter. And once I kind of passed that first screening call, I received a second schedule for a screen call. And upon that, I received notification that I would be completing a final day, super day interview, which essentially for me was 1 day, 4 back-to-back interviews from 9 to 5 p.m. So this was really time consuming, and this was online. I believe in the past, interns used to kind of be flown out to Redmond or whatever state or city this internship would be for, but in my experience, you know, post-COVID, it was remote. So what was my project? So for an overview, the name of my project was the State of Security Report. And for this project, I essentially worked with engineers and I built out a 25-page report with data visualizations, tables, and essentially did risk assessments by likelihoods and severity levels for the services I previously described. I also had a stretch project after meeting with someone in leadership to complete and build out a live dashboard, kind of illustrating my findings using this framework to assess risk. And some of the pictures I have here are pictures of me and some of my pod mates, as well as a picture of me working remote, because this was a hybrid styled internship. So to break this further, my project was broken into 5 phases. So my first phase, I was essentially interviewing each of the engineers. So I met with one of them. I planned out specific questions. We went over the questions, and upon all 6 of these interviews, I constructed 6 reports that I then shared with my manager, and this was the second phase of my project. It was really collaborative. We worked kind of back and forth, and that brought us into our third phase where we started doing the risk matrix and risk assessments. So we went through the information with each of the service owners and my manager, and we deliberated and figured out, okay, based on what they've shared, how would we rank each of these threats? How severe are they to occur again? How likely are they to happen again? Things like that. And then from that point on, we constructed different visualizations and tables to illustrate based on each organization within Microsoft as a company, which organizations are at different levels of severities. And upon doing all this kind of work, right, iterative work, going back and forth with my managers, with different stakeholders, I finally built out the 25-page report with my manager. So what was a day in my life during this internship? So I typically woke up around 6:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I would log onto my laptop after I got ready, and I would kind of see what my plans would look like for that day, review emails, things like that. And then by 9 a.m., my official workday started. I'd have a weekly team meetings typically, and upon that, I would do some independent work, have lunch with either like some of the fishbowl mates that I showed previously, or networking one-on-one chats with different people in the company. Microsoft, I believe, has over like 300,000 employees, so there's a lot of people to meet. And in the afternoon, I would typically have the interviews or meetings with stakeholders, and I'd typically catch up with my manager at some point, send some follow-up emails from my meetings, commute home with some of my intern friends, and then usually have some dinner, go to the gym, and by like 10 p.m. I'd log back on, do some more work independently, and then I'd go to bed by midnight. So what did life look like outside of this internship, outside of the office? So the Microsoft program had a lot of events for their interns. They had things like the intern puzzle day. They had Microsoft intern cohorts, which essentially was a program they built out where full-time employees, they would basically volunteer their time. So there'd be 2 full-time employees per group, and it'd be like a group of 10 interns or so. And we do different fun events during the weekends. In the past, these were funded by Microsoft, but as of late, with a lot of the recessionary gaps going on in the tech world, the interns and the employees would kind of fund those programs themselves. And there was a bunch of things like that, a lot of nature in the city of Washington or Seattle, a lot of hikes. We did a hike at Mount Rainier and did a lot of happy hours and things of that nature. So outside of that, some of the takeaways from me were that I did receive a full-time return offer to work for Microsoft upon graduation. I realized I did not love the city of Seattle, so I will not be returning there. I definitely think I prefer East Coast over the West Coast. I am looking forward to pursuing an MBA in the future. I really enjoyed my strategy work, consulting work, work with data visualizations, and I am currently pursuing content creation, so that's really exciting. Thank you so much. I also wanted to let you know if anyone has any questions or wants to reach out to me, here's some of my contact information. I also wanted to thank the data science department and the econ department here at Smith for supporting me through this process, especially as someone who's not coming in as like a traditional STEM background. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Melissa. All right. And then, Ruby, Natalie, Dakota.
First wanted to start off with thanking everyone for coming here and watching all of these presentations. We are going to talk about our internship with Umanos 3D, which we did over the summer for a total of a month and a half. I am Natalie. I'm an engineering major. Oh, no. Got it. I'm Natalie, an engineering major, senior, so graduating in May, which I'm really happy about. Yeah.
My name is Ruby. I'm also an engineering and also a senior.
I'm Dakota. I'm also a senior, but I'm not engineering. I'm a neuroscience and computer science double major.
Okay, so we first wanted to start off with how we found Umanos 3D. this was provided to us through the Picker Engineering Department. They sent out an email with various summer opportunities, and I immediately saw this one and I was like, ooh, Colombia. And I have a strong background in civil engineering, so this is not something that I ever thought I was going to be doing. But I was like, there's a possibility of interning in Colombia and working on prosthetics, and I recognized that there was a huge potential for professional and personal growth. So we shared this with Dakota, since Dakota didn't get the email, and I was like, STEM, anyone is honestly welcome to come, and if they need volunteers, they need volunteers. And so we decided to go through the Praxis program as well, because they do give a stipend for unpaid internships and nonprofits to do work over the breaks.
1K increase, international vocations. So a little history on Humanos 3D and why prosthetics are important for the people there. During the Colombian Civil War, there were landmines planted that haven't been excavated. So every day people can come across these mines and unfortunately are met with accidents. And also there are agricultural accidents, as Colombia is a big producer of coffee beans, and as well as anywhere there are birth defects and just any accidents overall. And there is difficulty access to healthcare, and the state provided prosthetics aren't the most useful, or they also don't blend to, they don't look like an actual hand. So it can make people feel ostracized in society.
A little bit. So the main purpose or the dedication behind Humanos 3D was to 3D print assistive devices that are tailored to each individual's. And during this internship, it combines the expertise of biomechanical engineering as well as computer science, and to design and optimize a prosthetic device that is both comfortable, functional, and aesthetically pleasing to the recipient. And the main goal of Humanos 3D is simply to improve the quality of life and social inclusion for arm amputees in Colombia.
So we each had our own individual projects for Humanos during the time that we were there. I was able to work on assistive devices, and especially an assistive device for one-handed zipping and buttoning for beneficiaries with transradial amputation, meaning they would have limbs up to this portion of their arm. And so my main goal for this was to sort of make it easier to actually do everyday activities. Everyone needs to wear a sweater on cold days. Everyone needs to wear pants or shorts. And so I wanted to make a rotating assistive device to optimize functionality when unbuckling pants. So these are just sort of, the first one is an idea that I started off with. And then the second photo is a couple of prototypes that I continued to work on.
So for mine and Dakota's project, we both kind of worked on different portions of this, but I was focused on the prosthetic robotic arm. And what I focused on was essentially designing, and I designed this in Fusion 360, and it's basically an encasing that kind of held all the circuitry. I worked on this along with another Smithy who isn't up here presenting with us, but her name's Malate. She is also in engineering. But I was focusing on creating an encasing device for an adult prosthetic. And we, other than working on the Fusion 360, I also worked on the circuitry that went behind making this prosthetic arm work.
Okay, so this would have been a video of the final product, which shows part of what I worked on, which was the back end computer science aspect of it, where I built, I guess, a large language model network, which looked at audio files, so that when a person said open and close in Spanish, that the arm would open and close. And this was the final product where our team lead, Christian, was showing us after we left that he built it and that it was working.
Okay, so my main key takeaway, I think, was there was a child that I was working with or that we saw passing through Manos, and his name was Miguel Angel. And he was a 7-year-old who had a birth defect birth defect, so his hands didn't fully form in the womb. And essentially, what we did was build him a prosthetic arm. And this was very emotional and touching for me because his parents were there and they began to cry because it was the first time that his child was able to pass him a cup with his left arm. So it was a very touching moment. And we saw a lot of these cases going through the internship when we did the mobile clinics. And
Speaking about mobile clinics, this is Isabel, and she was one of the recipients in Nahibra, where we went on a mobile clinic to go see. We built her custom frozen themed arm because that's what she wanted, because she wanted it to like represent her interests. And she really took to it and really like tried learning how to use it and passing the little blocks around to like get the fine-tuned details down. And because of her enthusiasm, the other recipients there, they were older men, and they usually aren't as receptive to these new devices because they're old, grumpy. But after seeing her, they're like, okay, maybe I'll just like try picking up a water bottle. Maybe I'll like try like these fine-tuning tasks. And over here, I'm teaching her a little handshake. But she was super cute, and she was like, I need a new one because I'm gonna go beat up little kids in my like area because they're making fun of me.
Yeah, and so the way that this works is basically when they close their elbow, the hand actually closes with their movement. And so in the first video was her actually being able to pick up some blocks and stack them on top of each other. And so we made a game that was how many blocks can you stack on top? And she was very excited to be able to stack 6 blocks on top of each other, which was really good because I couldn't even do it.
so my main key takeaways was I learned a lot about 3D printing, especially prosthetic manufacturing. I also was able to expand my professional network, and I now know a lot of engineers in Colombia, which is amazing. Um, I learned the importance of collaboration and teamwork because I worked on this not just by myself, but with Dakota and Melite. We also learned the importance of patient interaction, just knowing what the recipient needs and what they are looking for in a prosthetic, just to make it more easier transition into using the device.
So going into this, I didn't know too much Spanish. I expanded a bit of my Spanish, but really only towards Colombian slang, which is so useful. They taught us, like in the first week, a couple things like "chimba," which means how cool, and in return, I taught them some Chinese, like how to say hello, ni hao, and I love you, which is "我爱你." So every morning they'd like greet us with like "ni hao ma," which is like "how are you?" And when we left, they like wrote us little cards, and on mine it just said like "we love you" in Chinese, which is so cute. And being there with the team, it also like I was really immersed in the culture because they brought us around and showed us. You'll see some pictures later. And I got to see like a lot of art. And I also acquired more knowledge in machine learning with large language models, especially with working with audio files because I hadn't done that before. And that was pretty cool. I also gained expertise in 3D printing and using different 3D printing machines and software. And of course, engineering. As the non-engineer there, I fell a little bit in love with biomedical engineering, and I'm like looking more into that for maybe my possible future.
For me, I am actually part Colombian, so I know Colombia very well, but I didn't actually know Medellin super well. And so I came into this, first of all, just being very open to learning about the culture of the Medellin culture and just the dynamics of it. But in a more technical way, I learned how to iterate early and often. In our individual projects, I wanted to go into it, like just digging deep, going right into it. And I realized that's not the way to go. You have to come in with a plan. You have to like put enough buffer time for if you do fail. And a lot of the times you are going to fail. So I also recognize the value of asking questions through research, through online research, and also through the mentors and managers that we had. I did come into it with a lot of 3D printing knowledge, but did not know how to use a lot of the 3D printers that they had on hand there. So learning a bit about that, but also just learning about the transformative power of what assistive technology firsthand goes through with individuals, and especially with the story of Isabella, which was an incredible experience for me.
So here's a couple pictures and videos of us exploring Colombia. We went to a couple places such as Guatapé, which is a place with a big rock that is now covered apparently.
This video is
The
actually
video
big
was
rock.
on top of the big rock, and to Comuna 13, and we also went to their Pride Parade, which was so fun, and it was so nice seeing like the Colombians there like celebrate Pride. And the team also led us around to go and eat some of the classic like street food treats like an oblea, and it was great.
So, yeah. Okay, to end this all off, we wanted to give special thanks to everyone in our team, our Smith team, but also the Humanos 3D team. So we have a video that we wanted to show that was of our manager dancing.
Because we played Just Dance on like one of our last days. We got everyone into it to download on their phones, and we were just dancing to some interesting songs. But yeah, special thanks to Esteban, who was our manager, featured in the video. Christian was Ruby and I's like team lead, and Ruben is Natalie's team lead, as well as Allison, who was the administrative person and like director who helped us a lot with like some fine details.
And then, oh, okay, wait, I got this. Oh no, there's one last.
Forgot. I'm sorry, that's on me.
And we did want to fully end it off with saying that Humanos 3D is actually currently looking for volunteers and looking for people that would love to work with beneficiaries and just immerse themselves in the Colombian culture as well. So I think we can probably pass along the URL if anyone is interested for any summer opportunities and to actually use Praxis money. Yeah, thank you.
They have the best gelato place near their office.
So great. Thank you all. Okay, so we want to take some time and open it up to questions from folks in the room here, and also we're taking questions on Zoom. So anybody on Zoom, please plug those into chat. I'm going to take a look at that right now. And in the room, so we've got a microphone in the middle, or if you just want to raise your hand and ask, and I'll relay the question to people. So yeah, we got a question in the room. Could you just repeat the question?
So we were asked what happened to Isabella's arm. She also like was born with a congenital birth defect, but there were like others from accidents, and
There was one that had an accident actually using a machete while they were cutting in their job, cutting plants in their job. So we got to make one for them too.
So a question that came in through Zoom is, could you please share a significant challenge you encountered during your experiences? How did you navigate through it? Anyone want to jump in?
Okay, so do I repeat the question? Oh,
Yeah,
Okay, okay. So I think one challenge that I came in was that because it is a nonprofit organization, a lot of the materials that they have access to isn't like so that a lot of it isn't widely accessible or widely used. So I was so used to coming out of Smith, working with an Arduino board, and then I had to learn a whole new board, which is an SP32 board. And that was difficult in itself because I had to do a lot of background research on it. But at the end of the day, I can say that I can now work two different boards.
Yeah, for everyone.
I think the most challenging part for me was, I think, probably there was a lot of hiking involved, and preparing for that was intense. I would go to the gym, go in the Stairmaster, and like put the incline really high, but I also had to carry a lot of weight on my back, and I had to prepare for that. So that's probably toughest for me.
I would say the hardest part for me during my internship was when I had a one-on-one with someone in leadership, I think I mentioned, and they essentially kind of gave me some feedback of their thoughts on my project. And they thought it'd be a good idea for me to build out a live dashboard. But the internship was only 3 months long, and I got this feedback, I think, like in the end of my second month. So it was really hard to kind of think about how I could integrate this feedback into, the rest of my time at Microsoft. But still, obviously, like I think in corporate terms, in corporate speak, they call it scope creep or something like that, where different people kind of put their input into your project and then the scope of it expands. So it really taught me a lot about remembering kind of what my project was to begin with, obviously taking feedback, but staying within like the lines of what we intended to do.
So I have kind of a follow-up question, and just really thinking, I mean, all of you going into, I mean, really technical roles, right, and various responsibilities within those roles. So I'm curious, like, if you think back to, as you were coming into these summer experiences, like, how prepared did you feel? And like, were there any particular courses or things that you'd done at Smith or elsewhere beforehand that you found like really relevant connections while you were in it?
I think this connects to the last question and the challenges, but I think a lot of what college and Smith does is a lot of technical work. So I think what it didn't prepare me for was the emotional part of it. The part of like understanding what the beneficiaries need and like actually working with it. So coming into it, I was like, okay, I think I know what I can do. But then actually talking to the person that I was going to be working with, I needed to make sure exactly what they wanted, exactly what doesn't work, like what type of material affects their skin, or if they have some sort of birth defect that we have to work with from the get-go. I think the start of it is what was a bit challenging for me.
Sure. The question, let's see if I can remember it. The question was like thinking of going into pretty technical roles, any things that you saw connections like from past classes or other work you've done as a student that you found really relevant?
Sure. So I'm actually a transfer student to Smith, and I spent my first year of college at Bunker Hill Community College in Boston. And so when I had my final day super round interview, the interviews were essentially testing you on different aptitudes. So I had 4 interviews in that one day. They were each about 45 minutes long. And during my technical portion of that interview, I had to do like computer science question. And so my object orienting class from Bunker Hill really helped me, but my Python class in the SCS department here at Smith also helped me with that question. I felt prepared.
For me personally, I think what really helped me going into the experience was actually having almost 2 years of research experience at Smith prior to traveling to Svalbard. It was a bit daunting realizing that I was going to the Arctic Circle and traveling so far away from home and so far away from Smith. But I think also many geosciences classes at Smith really prepared me for that experience. But as I mentioned, like the physical aspect of it, I kind of had to prepare myself for.
Another question I was curious about, and I think you all touched on it just a little bit, but aside from the day-to-day work, like what was sort of the culture, the environment, the vibe of being at work? What did it feel like? Is there like some ways that you can kind of capture that to bring people in the room or listening in, kind of what that looked like when you were at work, so to speak?
So being in Colombia, the vibes are honestly pretty chill. Although like most people got there at 6 a.m., we got there a bit later and left later, but we worked hard like during the actual like work day, but at lunch it was like very nice and everyone was like talking a lot and like trying to get to know us and understand our culture while we like asked them questions about their culture. And that's like how we also got to like play different games with them, such as like Just Dance or just like introducing things that like we like to them. And that also like there's a lot of banter I guess during like the workday too. And it was honestly just like pretty fun. It wasn't like too strict and they made us feel like super welcomed when we came there. Like we were always a part of the team, like from the get-go. And yeah.
Yeah. I think me personally, I might be biased, but I think Colombia is a very, very nice place to be in. I think everyone there is very welcoming and they're always open to just like finding a new person, like a random person and being like, hi, who are you? And I think that's exactly what they did to us, especially with like Dakota and Malate not knowing much Spanish. They were very open to just being like, okay, we're gonna just speak English or we're not gonna speak at all. Or we're gonna try doing some Chinese and if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. But yeah, I think it was not just working, but it felt like a family to me. And I think that's the best part of it.
I would say I really enjoyed the work environment. I worked in a room called Fishbowl in like the cybersecurity center at Microsoft. And it was like the intern room and we had an admin there who was in person most days. I guess I could preface this by saying everyone is pretty much remote, I would say. Like it's a hybrid workspace, but most people on my team and most of my intern friends and people on their team were remote. And so Seaver just being in the office, he was so fun. He would like just jump in there and bring us like a piñata and we would just like break candy. And it was just a lot of fun in the office, honestly. I think I really love like the tech world because I think you're encouraged to kind of bring who you are to work and just be yourself. Like you work hard, you do, right? You're using your brain, sitting in meetings a lot, but you're also having fun while doing it.
I think for me, the way that I would describe being in Svalbard and being part of research is that it wasn't just me that was there. It wouldn't have been possible if I was there alone. And me learning and watching over the eyes of 3 very experienced professors and understanding their work and all of their research relative to what I want to do in the future really motivated me. I also wanted to say just, it was beautiful. The landscape there is beautiful. And when you're out in the field, just being able to have lunch and have this beautiful view of the lake is very life-changing. I'll always remember that.
I just wanted to add that I think I really enjoyed the fact that the internship was hybrid because when you choose to go in, it's like your choice, right? You're being an autonomous person. And so when you want to be there, I feel like you are enjoying your time there more than if you were, I guess, mandated like in some other companies.
Yeah, question. So let me capture the question for people on Zoom. So basically working in groups and navigating that idea of both working in groups, but also with like professional staff or more experienced staff, just kind of getting into that. Did I get it?
I guess for me, the one big thing was that I came with an open mind that I was going to learn something new and that there were going to be some things that I wasn't sure how to do. There were some 3D printers that we haven't used here at Smith that I didn't know how to work. But just being open to that learning curve and just being open to learning new things. And I also feel that like even though they were professionals and they all had like way more experience in this whole biomedical engineering field than I had, a lot of them were still open to learning about new things that we knew, or like some coding language that we probably knew, or that Dakota knew, or like some circuitry that I knew that they probably weren't familiar with. So I think that just everyone just being opening to learn off of each other and bouncing ideas off of ourselves, I think that really helped our learning curve.
To add on to that, for the coding part, it was like I was given a lot more autonomy to figure out how to achieve the result that Christian wanted. And that allowed me to like do my own research. And then like this also allowed me to like explain to other people like what I was looking or what I was doing and like if that's what they were looking for. And I also learned quite a lot because I went and like didn't really know how to like 3D print and I like didn't know anything about circuitry, but like I got a little crash course on that and like the code behind Arduino, and that was honestly so interesting and they were like so accepting. So I think the group work there was great.
I wanted to add, as a college student, you're working independently a lot. But I find like even in the classroom and in like the workforce, just working with people who are like have gratitude, it has been a great experience for me. I think when you're working with someone, even a professor, like you come in and they're like, okay, thank you all for being here. Like today we're gonna jump into this. Like it makes you excited to be there, makes you enjoy your time while in class. And I think the same can be said for like a corporate meeting or collaborating with coworkers on something or pinging someone. Like if there's someone on your team who anytime you ping them, they usually, ping you back in the next hour and they're usually thoughtful, just saying that your gratitude and being thankful for that, I think goes a long way and making it like a positive experience overall. Do you want to add something?
I think for me, the working collaboratively is key. And that's something that I want to do in the future. I love working with other people, but also touching on the fact that I was completing research and being in the field with people who are professionals, and I'm a college student. It really left so much room for learning. I was able to ask as many questions as I wanted and learn in many different ways. But I think at the same time, I allowed myself to not fear of making a mistake. For example, I didn't core a lake for the first time perfectly. It took multiple tries and just understanding that it takes time and practice, but people are there to support you for the entire way.
Yeah, so let's wrap up. This is a great question to wrap up on. For any of you, for all of you, if you'd like to go in. So for somebody who's maybe a younger student earlier on in their academic career, wondering where to start, if they're interested in some of the things that you were doing, what would you suggest to them for digging into a search? How soon would you suggest? Like what, if you were to summarize maybe some nuggets of wisdom from your own experience, what would you share with people? What would you suggest?
I would say it's never too early to kind of get out there and start. I would say I started my very first semester of college by taking classes that I thought, even though I'm not a computer science major, I thought that it could help me and I thought it was worth taking, and it did end up helping me, right? Like years later. For my experience at Smith specifically, I joined SCG, which is a student club here called Smith Startup Consulting Group. And that club helped me a lot because I met so many consulting is a pretty broad industry. So I met students of all majors who were interested somewhat in business or tech or finance, kind of in that realm. And so joining that club and meeting fellow peers who could tell you about certain opportunities coming up, give you insight to what kind of the timeline of different recruitment cycles would look like, really helped me get into my internship with Microsoft. Before Microsoft, I interned at Oracle. So I would definitely say your peers are your biggest asset. At least they've been for me in my experience at Smith.
I'd agree with that. Talking to older students and asking them how they got into XYZ or whatever you're interested in is a great way to figure out which direction to look in and to find resources. And for coding, you can never start too early for coding. There's so many free resources out there for you to learn any language. And either way, I think it's a really self-led interest / skill. So you can go as far as you can want in coding, and you don't have to go too far either, but Python.
And I also wanted to add on, because I know we have some other engineers in here. We did talk about networking, and a lot of what you do in life has to do with networking and taking advantage of the connections you already have, because a lot of us have so many connections, so many network pathways that we don't consider that can actually help us in life. And for me, I started off with being okay, I could be interested in this. I did an internship in it. It didn't work out. Okay, I'm interested in something else. I did an internship. It didn't work out. Okay. And so I moved into so many different pathways. I never did an internship in civil engineering. And I know exactly why I want to go into civil engineering, because I did so many different internships in other fields. And they were yes, they're interesting, but it's not something that I could see myself doing for a super long time. And so it's just trying to go with all the different paths, open doors that you have, and just digging deep, going right through it.
I think to add on and emphasize to what Natalie said, it is never too late to start networking, and it's the essential thing that you should be doing. But I also feel I think that also being able to branch out, I've never thought I would do an internship that was focused on biomedical engineering because I'm mostly interested in mechanical engineering, but just seeing how mechanical engineering could be fit into biomedical engineering kind of made me more interested now in human-centered design, which is something that I'm even doing currently as a senior. So
For me, I think what I would say is don't be afraid to do what you're really passionate about. Don't let other people say, oh, are you sure you're going to get a job in this? Are you sure you want to do this? You will be able to figure it out. There are people here at Smith who want you to succeed, and there are so many connections, as others have said.
And that seems like a perfect way to wrap up the panel. So thank you again to our panelists. A round of applause. Thank you to our audience, everyone who's here in person and on Zoom. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night. All right.